cut that embankment away now, but at that time, there was a embankment right past the stop sign, and they ran straight into it. I'm not sure what speed, but when you get stopped instantly, nothing gives. I mean, if you hit something that breaks or gives, you know, then all the force is reduced, but all the impact caused this seatbelt he was wearing to snap. He lived. He walked away. She was dead at the scene. And she was taken to Baptist Hospital, and I went there, and I was told her name, and her last name was a name that's not very usual, and I thought I knew her parents, and I didn't, you know, I wanted to break the news to them as easy as I could. So I called her father's business partner in the middle of the night, 2 in the morning, and I said to him, I said, I didn't want to scare him. He might think somebody in his family was dead because he knew I was a coroner. So I said to him, Terry, does so-and-so have a daughter named Renee? He said, yes. I wanted him to know I wasn't calling him about this crazy guy's calling him in the middle of the night asking him if his partner has a daughter by a certain name. But he said, yes. I said, I'm Frank Barron, Terry, and I need your help. He said, oh my God, is she did? I said, yes, she did. So then I said, Terry, we got to go to his house, tell him and his wife, you know, what's happening. If I knock on his door, he's going to know instantly when he sees me that he's a child dead. So I want you to meet me in a certain place to go with me. And I want you to knock on his door. I want you to first call him and say, I've got something that is bothering me so badly I cannot go back to sleep. I've got to see you right now. I don't believe in ever lying to anybody about anything. You know, so, but I wanted him to just tell him there's something that I have to see tonight. So he agreed. So he called the brother-in-law to meet him. So the 3 of us met. They went to the door, and I stayed back in the dark. And I said, when he opens the door and you go in, you just say, she's been in an accident, and someone here who needs to talk with you. Because I didn't want to put it on him to have to tell the father the terrible news, or the mother, or the king. So they got me in the door, and when I walked in, the father looked at me and said, she's dead, and she framed. I said, yes, she did. And a seatbelt probably would have saved her life. It saved his life. It was such an impact. I've never seen a seatbelt snap like that before. I could talk to you about many, many things. Now, if you want me to tell you some interesting cases, I can tell you some interesting cases and what all the coroner does. When I ask people, what does a coroner do? You know what they used to tell me? He pronounces people dead. Is that what you think the coroner does? Well, it is true that the coroner has the legal right to say that somebody's dead. But I always like to have, unless the person had been dead so long they were decomposing, or the head was severed from their body, I would rather have the EMS run an EKG and tell me they're dead. Let me tell you why. One night, a man I knew for a long time, his 2 sons were so well known you would know where I was talking about if I told you their names. He and his wife went to one of the sons' house, had a drink of alcohol in the afternoon, and they were leaving, and she got in the driver's seat, and she began to drive away. He didn't like the way she was driving. He said, stop the car, let me drive. So she stopped. He got out, walked around the car, and she backed over. He was rushed to the hospital, and his son, who was a medical doctor, was standing there with the head of the emergency room and the neurosurgeon, and 3 of them watching the monitors said he's dead. And so they left the room. Someone called me and said, you're done. So, you know, I said, well, you know, shroud his body, put him in a body bag, send him to the morgue, and I will find out what funeral home his family wants. And they left him in there for about an hour. They were busy in the emergency room, and when he went back to do what I told him to do, he was alive. His heart was beating. All the monitors were working. Now, if those 3 doctors could say he was dead, and he was dead as far as breathing, his heart beating. He had stopped breathing, his heart was not beating. But your heart can start back. You know, it's pretty amazing that from, 2 or 3 months after conception, the heart starts beating. Probably not that long. I don't know the exact number of days after conception, you know, of an unborn child, but to think that a message from the brain has to tell that heart to beat every time it beats from then on for maybe 100 years or so. It's pretty amazing. And that impulse kicked back in again. It involves, electrical conduction, electrolytes, all kinds of things. But it kicked back in, and he was alive. So I've also seen cases where the body was in the body bag already in the morgue, and the person was alive. I have a friend who was in a terrible wreck. He was in a medical college down in Charleston about 25 years ago, and he had just wasted away. They had to remove part of his intestines, and he was just wasted away. And they pronounced him dead one day and called for the people to come up from the morgue to take him down there. And he moved when they were putting him on a gurney to take him to the morgue. Well, since then, he finished law school in Columbia, medical school in Charleston, went to Bowman Gray and became a psychiatrist. That dead man's done a lot with his life. so I don't like to do the determining that somebody's dead if I can avoid it. I'd rather have the emergency medical people do that. And I have seen them make a mistake too by working time. But anyway, some of the other things that I do. Let's take an example of a car accident, someone's killed. Well, they're not supposed to move the body till I get there because they may not know who was driving the car. Maybe someone is killed and someone's alive, and if the living person was a driver and the deceased person was a passenger, that living person may be guilty of reckless homicide. And bodies get thrown all around, living and dead. Bodies can be repositioned or thrown completely out of the car. But the coroner is trained with the use of lab experts, forensic people with law enforcement agencies to determine who was sitting where and in the car. And then I'm also responsible for all the evidence on the body and the vehicle and all of the belongings. Let's say the person had a diamond ring on the finger. That's my responsibility to see that ring gets to their family without anything happening to it. So I'm responsible for all of the belongings of the deceased person and their body, as well as determining why they died, how they died. And there's a difference between cause of death and manner of death. The cause of death, I always had that determined by a medical doctor. A lot of times it's obvious, but I still have the doctor examine the body and determine why the person died. To give you an example, gunshot wound to the head. That's the cause of death. Manner of death could be an accident, suicide, or homicide. A friend of mine is a lawyer in Charlotte. He called me a few years ago. He said, "Frank, my son is dead." He had two sons. He said he was shot in the head, and the medical examiner up here says that he killed himself. So I went to the Charlotte medical examiner's office and saw Donnie Bryant, a friend of mine who works here, been to school with me at medical college out in St. Louis. We went out there and trained together for a while. And so I went to see Donnie. I said, "Donnie, go over this case with me. Show me the report." He showed me the autopsy report. It said self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. I said, "Well, I know most self-inflicted contact gunshot wounds, particularly to the head, are suicide. They can be executions, like in drug dealing, sometimes you have these things happen. But they can be homicide." So I said, "Let me see the rest of the evidence." So he said, "There's nothing else I need." So I went to the police investigator. He said, "Let me get her on the phone." I got her on the phone. I tried not to, be pushy. I tried to